Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Enchanted Bookstore Part 2. New visitors. On an autumn breezy day, a couple began to argue just at the entrance of the bookstore. As they argued, they wandered into the bookstore, where their daughter, who they'd taken with them, went to a corner, upset, covering her eyes and fed up of her parents' constant quarrelling. The young girl, Grace, decided to just hide away in the store, her parents totally absorbed in their argument. Grace looked around, and she saw joyous people, and her sadness made her feel out of place. The lady, that is, apparently the owner of the store, approached the young girl, giving her tissues to dry her eyes and consoling her. She handed Grace a book and told her that it was a special book. It would make her happy again and she would see. As Grace started looking at the picture book, she began to remember all the happy times, and she could not understand why a happy family had fallen apart. Her contented home had become such the opposite now. As night began to fall, the bookstore closed. However, Grace stayed inside the bookstore. Her parents, continuing their argument, had walked out of the store without their own daughter. And the owner of the store, so we think she may be, simply let her stay. What else could she do for the little girl? How strange it may seem to us that a little girl was left in a bookstore. For some reason, at that particular moment, it did not seem unusual, but almost like it was meant to be. The little girl found a teddy, and she held on to it for comfort. The owner of the store told her that she could quite happily go up to the attic in the store. So she took Grace's hand and she led her to the attic. The shop lady even gave her a large t-shirt for bed and let her wash up, brush her teeth and her hair. All of this, and it just seemed normal in that moment. But if we are honest, think about it, it's quite unnormal behaviour of any bookstore owner. The owner made her a hot chocolate and Grace took the chocolate from the lady. And suddenly she began to pour out her heart. The trouble she had about her now argumentative parents, who seemed to be unhappy so much. She flicked through the picture book as she released all of her heartache. Grace told her story. When she was born, her mother stayed at home and took care of her. Her father worked and took the role of providing for bills, expenses, all the kind that households generally have. Whenever they had gone away or family time where they would travel together, they would have plenty of things to do. They would be so happy and just enjoy the time. But as time did go on, things changed. The happy life she had was broken. She was a very observant child, though, and she remembered the exact night things changed for the family. Her father had been very late home from work, much later than he ever had before, and her mother was sat waiting for her father silently in the living room. She knew, because she peeped from the stairs leading to the bedroom. She can see everything from that point. When her father came home, he was very drunk. She watched all of the argument unfold as she wandered downstairs, peeping and creeping, hoping to get the usual hug from her dad. But no, she had made a mistake, really. as she stood outside the living room. This wasn't going to happen. No hugs were to be had tonight. Grace heard how her mother had a high-paid job before she was born, but left it all behind to care for Grace, and now her father blamed her mother for not helping or shouldering the family expenses with him. Since that night, the arguments continued, always about the same thing, over and over. This made Grace begin to feel like she was a burden to her own family, for she believed she was the sole cause to the family's unhappiness. The picture book Grace was looking at was about a rabbit's journey, but again, there was no ending, just blank pages. So she asked the dear lady shopkeeper, "What about the ending? Why is there no ending? I want to know how this story ends." At this, it came about that, obviously, same as before, the shopkeeper told her she could make her own ending, and she could make it as special as she liked. The shopkeeper gave Grace the quill and told her to close her eyes and wish for the ending. Grace did this, and she decided to wish that the rabbit had found a loving and happy, joyous home. So all the family of the rabbits were together, reunited. They were loving, they were happy, and they did not argue. Again, the quill lit up and the magic started. However, meanwhile, as we go to her parents, who had returned home, they were still arguing and had not noticed they had no daughter with them. It took them around 10 minutes to even get home without realising, and at least 7 when they were in the home before the mother went to Grace's room, just assuming she would be there, that she had returned home with them, not even thinking for a moment she'd been left behind. Grace's mother entered a quiet and empty room. There was nothing but a strange book on Grace's desk. She opened it and it glowed, so she called her husband to come very quickly. And as he entered the bedroom, they could not tell if they were small or if the book got big, but it sort of turned into a door and it glowed. It did glow with a lot of beauty though. The problem is, why was it glowing? And where was Grace? And how come all they could think of was walking through this door that was in a book? Nothing else entered their mind. It was almost like it was calling to them, asking them to enter. So they felt they were compelled to go through the shining book that had become a door. And they did so. When they got to the other side, that very moment they hit the other side, they were different. They had new looks. They had different clothes. They even had weapons. The couple, they were very confused, and it was almost like they were dreaming. Maybe they believed this was so. That's what it felt like. Then, from out of nowhere, literally from nowhere, a small elf appeared, handing the couple a letter, and it began to John and Anne, seemingly their names now, obviously. The letter told of the suffering to the land. There was a disease, and it had been declared a matter of global state if it spread. The disease was in the water. The water had become polluted, and it was spreading quite rapidly. A legendary blue gem hidden in Demon Cavern could solve all of these problems, for it would destroy the disease and purify the water and the land. It seemed the letter referred to the couple as the bravest of knights in the land, and this is why it must be them, for their daughter was apparently back at home. She was in the land where they were, but she was sick with the disease. So the couple accepted that they would find this jewel and save the lands. They had no idea what to expect, but they were determined to save lives. The king provided them with the best equipment in the lands so that they could continue on their quest. Of course, though this did seem like something of great importance, again, they did think back to how they got there, but they were just compelled to go along with this and do what needed to be done. It's almost like this was their ultimate goal, and no matter what, they were going to do it. They were also given a map. This led to the demon cavern, but it was very old and it had aged over time. Finding the entrance would be hard. For 5 nights and days, they walked and walked, only napping occasionally, eating and drinking on the move. They came to a large, beautiful waterfall where there was simply no road ahead. So they decided to camp there the night. Anne did notice a rather peculiar smell, though, and it was coming from the waterfall. It was not a pleasant smell at all. So she explained to John what she could smell, and he agreed, and it made them very suspicious of it. So John called his dragon to fly above the waterfall and see if anything was there. A way around the dragon could find also, if he could fly above and just see if there was any way to get past. As far as they knew, this waterfall was in the way. The dragon, once up in the air, spread its wings really wide and actually flew straight into the waterfall. The dragon now behind the waterfall, and there was no way to go across the waterfall nor around it. John decided the best thing that he could do was cut the flow off of the water, for then this would create an entrance to get to the dragon behind the waterfall. The water was way too powerful for them to walk through it. Not the dragon, but definitely them. So he chopped down a huge tree in order to stop part of the water flowing. When he did that, he could see there was a cave. Well, a hole to be exact. A black hole hiding behind the waterfall. The dragon was there, waiting and growling. They realised this must be the entrance to Demon Cavern. So they called back the dragon so they could mount him. And onward they went inside the dark entrance. Deep, deep inside they travelled, where a bright blue and purple beating heart, the heart of the earth, they saw, and it was attached to the tree of life. They were in wonder and awe of this sight, but they had to continue forward, and on foot, because it was getting too narrow for the dragon to be able to work his way round. They had torches, but they soon realised they were walking through the bones of a giant dead snake. They could feel that they were going possibly the right way, but yes, they could feel the bones of the snake. So when they shone their torches up, they saw it was the bones, indeed, of a giant snake that they were walking through. Not only that, though, as they shone their torches left and right, they realised they seemed to be a lot of human skeletons along the way, which told them people had already been there and most likely failed, or maybe fell prey to someone or something. As they came to the end of the large snake bones, They walked further in, where there was nothing but dark tunnels, and then they felt lost and disheartened because they come all that way, and now the snake had ended, which they had walked through, and there was many tunnels, and they were all dark. They had no idea which way to go. Just as they were ready to sit in despair and cry, they heard footsteps echoing through the tunnel. A dwarf appeared. This little dwarf, he explained he was a survivor, and he could help them and knew the story of the blue sapphire stone. It's a legend and a myth, but though a myth, they were there to do the job. The story goes, the blue sapphire contained all the energy of nature and kept the balance of the earth. The king's cousin stole this precious gem from the tree of life, and he gave it to the Snake King. The Snake King was called Kabraska. He in turn promised to help the cousin take the throne. The balance of the world was broken, and disaster hit the lands. Kabraska, being the Snake King and very sly, did not keep his word. Not at all. He killed the cousin, and what he did was begin to combine the gem with his heart, for if he did this, he would become more powerful, and he would be immortal in body and spirit and mind. He would never die. This would take time. It's not something that happens straight away. So he was still in the process of having the heart bind to his own body. We say a heart because it's in the shape of a heart, you see. The sapphire gem is in the shape of the heart that goes in the heart of nature that provides life to the tree of life. But to do such a thing takes time and a lot of pain he must go through. So they realised, the couple, that they must not have a lot of time left before the gem was completely attached to the Snake King. And if it did and became attached on the Snake King's very own body, its heart, that's it. It would be over because they couldn't put the gem back and the balance could not be restored. Also, it is said how the Snake King could not fully awaken the power of the gem. Only true love with the same energy as the gem could finally awaken the sapphire. Those that awaken it become its true owner, no matter what or who was allegedly using it. So even though he thinks he has the power, he truly does not, for he can only awaken the power already there, not the hidden power. They realised they had to try. So the couple began to remember their happy life together. They concentrated their very hardest. They began to feel a beat, pulsating, vibrating. It was in the air under their feet, matching their very heartbeats. They brought up all their happy memories, remembering her daughter, realising the pure love and happiness that she brought when she was born and into their life she came. Suddenly, they rushed back to the tree of life, and the gem had awakened. That's what the beat was. It had awakened. Now, they had to be true love, of course, and though they were shocked, they came together and kissed. This brought back the gem to the tree of life and in the heart, instantly killing the Snake King, and he fell to 1,000,000,000 pieces. And though the gem was back, and that was indeed important, finding their lost love and the feelings between them was the most precious thing in the world, because that's what was needed, true love, and to find the true meaning of a happy family, because they had lost it. Suddenly, there was a flash of light, and they were back in the real world. Shocked, but they did remember. The one thing that they did remember fully was the love they had for each other, and the love that they had for their daughter. All of a sudden, Grace was peering from the attic window of the bookstore, and she saw her parents now happy, and they immediately ran into each other's arms and hugged very, very tightly. The shopkeeper looked at the happy family in the book, and she closed it and put it away on the shelf where it belonged. Now she continues to wait for another customer. The end. That was part 2 of Enchanted Bookstore. I can do many customers, but I'm not going to. There's only one more part after this, and it's not as long, I promise. Thank you for listening. I did write it myself, so it's just fiction fantasy. But please hit that like and share if you can. I truly appreciate it. And many blessings.